We're starting.
Okay.
For authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs. Listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Now Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man. And joining me today is Sandra Sneed. And this is a return visit for Sandra. She was on here a month or so back, and, well, I'm not good with time, folks. As everybody probably knows by now, so that may be an incorrect time frame, but somewhere, not too long ago. And we were talking about her other book, What to Do When You Die. And now she's come back, and we're going to talk about the lost symbol of Adam and Eve. But before we get to that, I want to inform everybody that it's come to my attention that anybody that has upgraded their browsers or their, not their browser, but their software, the Microsoft users, to the latest update, you've also installed Internet Explorer 10, whether you knew it or not at the time. And anywhere you go to a website that has a Flash player, you probably won't be able to see the Flash player, and you're probably going to have to Google and figure out how to get it going, like I'm going to have to tomorrow. I do have the Windows Media Player. Some of y'all are able to see it. Some of you are not. Whether you are or not, it'll be up at YouTube. It'll be in my archive and at Daily Motion as usual. So you will be able to catch it, just maybe not right now. May have to do it after you get your Flash players fixed. Now also, if y'all would like to learn a little bit more about Sandra, you can go to www.sandrasneed.com, and she has information about both of her books there, about herself, about her work as a God scribe, the whole 9 yards, anything you could possibly need to know about her. And she's got contact information there as well. And she's made herself really easy to reach for everybody, so there shouldn't be any problems whatsoever. If anybody wants to call in and ask questions, the number is 832-632-7904. And with that, why don't we get this show underway? So, Sandra, how are you doing today?
Hi, Royce. I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing just fine. And I want to thank you for returning to the show again. I really enjoyed our last conversation.
Me too. Me too, very much.
And I have been looking forward to learning more about this lost symbol of Adam and Eve, so I'm happy to get the chance to learn a little more about it. So what can you tell us maybe a little bit about what got you interested in it and, what motivated you to write it would be a good start.
Sure. Well, what happened is in 2004, while I was an atheist, actually, I had lost a job I loved and a man I loved, and I sat down to write a lament to try to quell this terrible loneliness and panic that had come over me. And what happened one day is I put my pencil on the top line of a new spiral notebook, and before I knew that my pencil was moving, it had stopped, and what came out was unemployed, ? It is my assertion you are employed by me. And what that did is it sparked a year of solitude wherein I took dictation from God and filled up 10 spiral notebooks, taking dictation. And one of the evenings that I was sitting down to take dictation, this story came out verbatim over about an hour's worth of meditation. And the title of it was Relief to See Her Arrive, the Lost Symbol of the Adam and the Eve. And it is a story that is the narrative of the genesis of the first humans on Earth. And that came over a period of about an hour, maybe 2 hours. Time kind of disappears when I'm taking dictation from God. So.
My, how time flies when you're having fun.
Right. Well, and it's kind of entering a different dimension where there is no time, and the sense that there's no distance as well between you and the source of all creation. So that's really you lose a sense of time is what happens. You lose a sense of linearity as well.
Yeah, I've had that happen to me before, but I wasn't taking dictation at the time. But about this lost symbol of Adam and Eve, can you tell us what it is?
Sure. Well, in the story that came about, I'd like to just read the opening paragraph.
Sure.
Just so that people kind of get an idea of the way God talks and tells a story.
And by the way, before you start,
yeah.
I do stand corrected. I'm looking at your book cover. It does say the lost symbol of the Adam and the Eve, and I have been putting those together, and I do apologize for that.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. It's such a historical story that it's deep within our unconscious because we've been hearing it for so long in our own lives, and the way we've been hearing it, unfortunately, is very different from how God has given this story. So here's how it opens.
Okay.
He was alone. He had forgotten what created him. He had forgotten the being that dwelled within him. The Adam had been instructed to name every living creature on the earth and learn the habits of his own hands and legs and feet. As he worked, he became abundantly strong and able, and gone about his tasks in delight of his Creator's instruction. Their relationship was a mighty one. The more the Adam favored the accounting of the things his Creator did make, the more magnificent the Creator appeared to his mind. But slowly the Adam began to notice he was the only one of his kind. So in this opening paragraph, God sets it up to tell us that Adam had a job and a purpose, and that purpose is to be an accountant of all of the creations that were erupting onto the surface of the earth. Now, in my book, What to Do When You're Dead, What to Do When You're Dead, a former atheist interviews the source of infinite being. God talks a little bit more about that as well, and I asked God, why is it that God didn't know the creators and the creations that were on the surface of the earth? And God explained that the mind of God is so vast that any single question would be forgotten before the answer could be retrieved. And so the necessity to create beings with memory, and memory that can be accessed at the same time that a question is asked, is why the physicality of the human, which is man from humus, was created, and that man is really spirit. That is the aspect of us, of mankind, that is created in the image of God, not our physical bodies, because God has no form. God is a formless, vast, formless being in nature, and God cannot be any form except through the beings that God makes.
Kind of like a symbiont?
A symbiont. What's a symbiont?
They inhabit a host body.
Where are they from?
Well, actually, it's a term that I derived from watching things like Babylon 5 and Star Trek and that. Other species could be from anywhere that live through other species by, that live inside of a host are called a symbiont.
Interesting. It's very different in that the symbiont is an entity of its own, and has an independent nature of its own. So it becomes a personality within the person or the host, or where God is all that ever was and all that is, and then the aspects of God that are these creative beings, or the beings that have been created, These are different aspects of God that are expressed through some physical form. So another thing that's in the book, What to Do When You're Dead, and not in this particular story, this narrative, as you can tell from the first paragraph, is really it's a story that is similar to how we would tell a poem, it's similar to poetry. But in my book, God is really, it's a dialogue that I have with God. So this story, Relief to See Her Arrive, is very symbolic, has a great deal of symbolism in it. And one of the symbols that Adam, man, which is man, and I don't mean male, because man represents spirit, and then woman is man with a womb. So it's a misnomer to imagine Adam and Eve as male-female. They are really just two aspects of God that were split in order so that they may reproduce.
Actually, if my understanding of Genesis in the King James is correct, it reflects exactly what you're talking about, and most people just kind of misinterpret it and misunderstood it, because the way it reads, it sounds like something that, well, it can't mean it that way. We must be misunderstanding, and it leads to an interpretation that would make more sense to us, in other words.
Right. Oh, there is, yes. I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, it's not that. I opened up my eSword, was going to try to find that particular location because it may add to what you're saying and give you something to build upon on top of that.
Yeah, because there's definitely things in the original King James version that has been misinterpreted, but then there's a great deal that was also left out, and we'll get to that.
Right. Well, according to Genesis 1:27, oh, sorry about that. I didn't mean to do that to you. But yeah, according to Genesis 1:27, it says here, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he male and female. Now, that to me reads like man could be both male and female.
Right. And that's the part that has confused a great number of people, and skeptics and atheists also. That's one part that they consider, to be inconsistent and therefore can't be correct. But another part that they find inconsistent is that there's another chapter where God talks about Adam and Eve, or man, being created in addition to all of the other beasts of the earth, and the kind of the chronological order in which all creation was made. And then it appears to be two different stories of Adam and Eve. Like God told me that the first mention is the chronological order of creation up to the creation of man, and then the next chapter about Adam and Eve is just a more detailed version, or a more detailed part of the story of man and mankind.
Okay.
Well, let's go on a little bit more into the story, because we want to get to the part of Eve and why Eve was made. So in this, the Adam's eyes were drawn delicately on his face instead of beastly, and his mouth could imitate every sound of any animal he watched or spoke to. He had no claws, but instead had hands that enabled him to build as his Creator instructed. He was magnificent in so many ways, and the Creator being was delighted by the joy of their togetherness. But the Adam's sense of this preciousness began to fade as he grew tired of the tedium of his work. Suddenly, noticing his aloneness frightened the Adam. He began to lose the voice of his Creator in his mind. Suddenly, the calls of the beast became louder. Each crack of the branch seemed closer. The weather turned against him, where once his Creator had made him shelter by leading him through thicket and marsh, desert and stream, mountaintop and canyon wall. The Adam searched continually in vain for the beings that were like him, but none appeared. So then God goes on to talk about how fear came over Adam, and it's in that fear, it's his heart racing. It squeezed out the very voice of God within him, and he lost that connection to God. And then that is when God said it was not good that Adam be alone. Because the Adam's heart is a window for the world of creative means, and it is the only way that God can live on the earth that it had created. But suddenly there was a wrenching of the Adam's heart, and this wrenching was squeezing out the very essence of being. The Adam's heart now had a sound uniquely driven. Its manner no longer had kindness and gratitude. Its pace quickened, pumping worry throughout, and a chill ran through the spine of the Adam.
Go ahead.
Then, and I don't think there's any part in Genesis that would give us an indication of that aspect, of the heart.
No, not that I know of.
Yeah. What is interesting in this one is this part. So the Mighty One engaged the council of the mind of creation. They decided there was an answer after all. And what's interesting is God's referenced here then as a they. And in the book of Genesis, though, God is also referenced in the plural form. It says, let us make man in our own image. Or, yes, it says, let us make man in our own image.
Yes.
Yes. So that part is consistent. And God has always been in plural form for me in my God scribings in meditation. It's never a he. God has never been represented as a he or a she. It's always been a they. But it's still one. It's like that.
Well, if you don't mind my interceding here, Sandra.
Sure.
I'm thinking that also in the ancient Eastern teachings, God was androgynous, being male and female. So a they would be an appropriate term. And if man was created in his image, he would also be androgynous, at least before we got our present form.
Right. Okay, so here it says, a mighty sleep passed over the Adam, and the Creator began the work of great mastery. It took from the cage that protected his heart and breath and shook the contents therein. Quote, this rib is the very soul of my protective ways. As it protects the heart, so shall she. As it protects the breath of life, so shall she. She will be uniquely designed to carry the brilliance of observation beyond my beloved Adam's articulate ways. She shall show him all the things he is missing in his accounting of my creatures and their ways of being. She shall show him that he is loved by every nature this earth has to offer. She shall notice these ways that he does not, and will give him the ability to reproduce his own kind thereafter. It goes on, but I can pause here. And, what's clearly in this story, God is showing how female is, a lot of, and I can't remember where the origin of this is recently, but a theologian, I don't remember his name, said that he believed that the reason Eve was created from Adam's rib is so that man and woman be side by side. But that, to me, is a human interpretation not a creator interpretation, because if you imagine, one thing I did find out is that the rib contains stem cells, and it's actually one of only a small amount of bones that can regenerate themselves. So in this God says the Creator began the work of great mastery, took from the cage that protected the heart and shook the contents therein. So that to me says that these are the stem cells God was using to create Eve, so that she would be as the rib is, which is protects the heart and lungs in the body.
It's interesting.
Yeah. So she was made to be the protector of God in man, which would explain a lot of things about the female nature, to be very acutely aware of feelings, because feeling is what tells us our state of being, what state of being our mind is in. What we feel is the state of mind that we are sensing, and our body is picking up those sensations, and those sensations are what we are feeling. So feelings, I believe, are going to be, over the next 20 years, a completely different way of seeing the human condition, that we are going to know more and more about origins of feelings and how important they are to our behavior, and what we can learn from other animal species, just from our own understanding of our own feelings.
Okay. Now, one of the things you was talking about a minute ago, if you don't mind me going back,
Sure.
was the stem cells and the ribs, because I was not aware of stem cells being in the ribs until you said it. To my knowledge, though, ribs is one of the few regenerative things in your body, your skin and your ribs. They also use stem cells for their research because they are regenerative. So that would all make a lot of sense, where to grab it somewhere from where it would regenerate the rib bone, and it would make a lot of sense why scientists are wanting to use it to this day to cure diseases. But, doctors, they break off rib bones when they work on the lungs, replace a lung, tear out a lung that ain't used anymore. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering about this, because a lot of people out there have a cow saying that we're playing God by using stem cells, but where's the real loss if a doctor could take it off of a broken rib anyway?
Right. And I think we play God all the time, and I don't, certainly from my conversations with God, that's exactly what God intended. And the story of Adam and Eve is, when it's interpreted correctly, very clearly tells us that that's what was intended. But we have to look at the story of the moment when we became self-thinking. Well, here's something I want to throw at you. So if you imagine Adam and Eve as being these artificial intelligent beings that the great Creator made, if we made artificial intelligence, say robots, and we wanted to know, and we wanted them to think on their own, what would we do to find out or test whether or not they were thinking on their own, whether or not they were going outside of their own programming? What would be that test? So we program these robots, and we tell them all the things that they are supposed to do. We tell them how to take care of themselves, what they need to do to, to create shelter from the weather, how to build. We teach them any number of human abilities. But the only way that we are going to know that they're thinking on their own is if they do what? You still there, Royce? Royce? Hello? Oh.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Oh, I am so sorry, Sandra. I had to cough while you were talking, and I hit my mute button, and I thought I turned it back on. And I'm sitting there, do you hear me? Do you hear me? You're going, Royce, and wait a minute, mute button. I am so sorry. I apologize for that.
Oh, that's so funny. I was like, am I still on the air?
Yeah, you're on the air. Everything you say can be heard, just not everything I said.
Yeah.
But, okay,
so what did you say?
I was sitting there saying I can't quite get to what would be the test you're referring to that you would give them. It would be something on independent thought and sentience, right?
Right.
It'd be kind of like asking them to solve a problem that you haven't pre-studied for, in other words, something that showed cognizance. But what exactly would be a good test for that, do you think?
Giving them something, to disobey.
Oh, I get it. That's what the fruit of the garden was all about.
Yes.
I don't know why, but that just didn't dawn on me.
And everybody I ask that to, it just doesn't dawn on us. It's not an easy, it's so easy that it's easily missed. But that was the purpose of God setting it up, that Adam and Eve do something that would indicate they are thinking on their own. Now, the serpent in the garden represents so much more than what we've been told. We've been told that it represents the devil, and that, first of all, according to God, there's no such thing as an entity that is all in all evil, and there is no such thing as a devil. Now, from a symbolic point of view, however, there are all kinds of ways to use this symbol of the devil to manage many of human behavior and human error, but there really is no such thing as the devil. And the snake represents singularity in the garden. It represents singular thought, because the serpent has the ability to sail across the sand, sail across the sea, to climb a tree, to do all these magnificent things without arms or legs. And its sense organs are all one single organ through its body. But the real interesting aspect of the symbol of this serpent is that the snake in the garden represents getting rid of pestilence. The snake eats the pests that would eat all the food in the garden, because if they were left to their own devices, there would be no food for the Adam and the Eve. So not only was this serpent to protect the humans, but also to be a messenger for God in singular thought and singularity, single form. And the beguiling of Eve, one thing we've kind of jumped over is, I want to read this part about the making of the Eve.
Okay.
The mighty one sought the sinuosity of the cat and the serpent, and the delicate skin of the petals on the flowers that the atom so admired. The one tore open the